There is no home for an actual liberal. And this is why recently on my show I found it much easier to build bridges with guys that 5 years ago I would have thought I would never talk to.
Good morning, West Palm. How we doing, people? All right. I didn't know if anyone was going to be here this early in the morning. Good for you guys getting up. That's the thing. That's the thing. Conservatives, you're all real people, and you get dressed, you have a little coffee, and you're ready to do things during the day. Yeah. Progressives, not so much. It's very, very different. I'm very happy to be here. It's been a crazy couple of years for me. I spent last year opening for Jordan Peterson. You guys, everyone loves the Lobster Man. Everyone loves Jordan. Spent a year opening for Jordan, and apparently today I'm opening for the President of the United States. Like, what is next year? Jesus, maybe. Jesus H. Christ. He's here, everybody. I'm really happy to be here. This is my third time at the Student Action Summit, and it's sort of funny because I think most of you guys kind of know about my political evolution and sort of what I've been up to. And, I came from the left. I know what that thing is. I know what the progressive thing is. I know what sort of wokeism is. I came from that world, and when I first spoke here 3 years ago, I was kind of nervous. Like, I didn't know what I was walking into. I'm seeing all these people with red hats, and they're scary right-wingers, and I thought, I'm in a lot of trouble. But what I have found over the last couple of years is that it's you guys, actually, who are the tolerant ones now. It's you guys, actually, who are the decent ones, and the ones who are open to intellectual curiosity and free thought and all of these things. And I see this over and over and over again. And in these last 3 years that I've been talking about these things, sort of what's wrong with the left, and what I see right now as just an absolutely incredible thing happening on what I would say is sort of the center right now, where, you've got conservatives and libertarians and classical liberals and a lot of ex-lefties who are coming together to sort of battle things out and figure out, what kind of country should we live in, and what should America be like? A country of 300 plus million people from all over the world that is the freest place in the history of the world. Do you guys know that? You live in the freest place in the history of the world. Like, it is not even close. It is not even close. There are people wandering around with iPhones in the United States of America telling you how oppressed they are. You are not oppressed if you have TikTok. You're not oppressed. You just are not oppressed. So I try to give a different talk every time I do one of these things, and I thought I'd hit a couple things here that I haven't quite talked about publicly before. I thought it might be interesting to just mention this shampeachment thing. Are you guys paying attention to this? Yeah. So real quick, I think we're probably all on the same page with this thing. I should say, I don't know that Mr. President will be thrilled with me if I say this, I actually voted for Gary Johnson, okay? Now I should be judged accordingly for that. I saw a lot of you roll your eyes, yeah. I voted for Gary Johnson, so I voted for the libertarian candidate, right? And I preface the reason I'm saying that because I think for anyone, whether you're a Trump supporter, whether you're a lefty, whether you're a Democrat, Republican, libertarian, whatever it is, we're watching something very bizarre happen in this country right now, which is we're watching basically a full-on assault from one branch of government on another branch of government. And I don't have to give you guys a civics lesson, but we have 3 branches of government that are supposed to have checks and balances, make sure none of them get too out of control, and that has worked for us in incredible ways for over 200 years. And what we're in the midst of right now, is that one branch of government on a purely partisan basis, the Democrats right now, are deciding that we had an election 3 years ago, we're not that happy with the election, and we're going to try to overturn that election. That is seriously dangerous stuff. So I know you guys are all on board with that, but you really should be aware when you're back at your schools, you're back at your colleges, and your friends are you know, screaming how happy they are that there's impeachment. They don't even know what it means, right? Nobody knows what it means, and they're just saying all these crazy things. You guys should be clear in understanding the issues here that a partisan, meaning these are all Democrats, and I would say the same thing, by the way, if this was a Democratic president and it was exclusively Republicans trying to impeach him, I would say the exact same thing, that you can't have a partisan impeachment. And it's just really important for you guys to know that and be able to fight back when you're getting sort of assaulted and people are telling you how great this whole thing is, because it isn't great. But all right, let's put impeachment aside. I thought we'd talk a little bit about big tech, because you guys basically know me from YouTube. Have you heard about the YouTube? You guys on the YouTube? Yeah. That's funny. Usually I mention YouTube and people boo. You guys applauded. That's good. We have a major problem with big tech, and it's one of the issues that when I talk about why there's something so cool happening on the right, there is an incredible debate happening right now between conservatives and libertarians about what do we do about big tech, because you guys all know this. If you basically are anyone that leans somewhat right, and it's really not even somewhat right anymore. Basically, if you're non-woke, right? If you're just anything other than a pure progressive, if you're anyone that dare fight identity politics, which, by the way, is quite literally the worst set of ideas that is out there in the world right now, the idea, the idea that I could look into this crowd and go, oh, you're a white girl, you must think that, or you're a black guy, or you must think that, or you're a gay guy, you must think that, or you're Asian and you must think that. This is the most dangerous set of ideas that is being proliferated throughout the world right now. This is happening everywhere. This is actually the reverse of what Dr. Martin Luther King wanted, right? He wanted his children, he wanted his children not to be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And actually, we now have sort of half the political system saying, no, we should actually judge people by the color of their skin. And then at the same time, they will tell you guys that somehow you are the intolerant ones, you guys are the racists and the bigots and the rest of it, while their very ideology is actually based in prejudice, right? What is prejudice? It means to prejudge. So if you walk around and you're looking at people's skin color and you think that somehow gives you some insight into what they think, I mean, that actually is prejudice. That actually is bigotry. And yet this concept has somehow been accepted, and not only accepted, this concept is now basically all of Hollywood. It's half of the political machine. It's everything we hear on CNN or MSNBC. Fortunately, nobody watches those channels, but if they did, it would be a problem. So, big tech, how does this all fit into this? Well, you guys know that we've got all sorts of problems when it comes to shadow banning and deboosting and deplatforming and algorithmic manipulation and just the inability to actually be able to communicate with each other, right? We've got a middleman here that we know kind of doesn't like us, right? So you can be a celebrity on Twitter and you can say whatever you want about Trump, you can say whatever you want about you guys, you can call everybody Nazis and bigots and the rest of it, and you have no problem. But if you put out basic conservative thought, or not even conservative thought, if you put out basic scientific thought, like here's a controversial one. Did you guys know this? I don't want to freak you out. I know it's early in the morning. Did you know that men and women have different biological differences? Did you know about that? A couple of you have heard? Yeah, I know. It's too early for that. Yeah, it's too early for that. Yeah, but if you put out ideas like that we all know to be true. I'm sure many of you guys know Douglas Murray, who's an incredible conservative thinker out of the UK. I've had him on the show a bunch of times, and he just wrote a wonderful book. It's called Madness of Crowds, The Madness of Crowds. And in it, he talks about how suddenly we are debating things that we know we've settled a long time ago. And yet someone will walk into a room and say, well, no, men are not men, women are not women. And then we get muddled in conversations that we put to bed a long time ago. And by the way, I want to be very clear about something. For me, at least, I would want every single person, regardless of their sexuality or whatever gender they identify with, or if you happen to be trans, of course I want you to be treated with the exact same respect as everyone else. Of course I want you to be treated, yeah. Think about that. You guys just spontaneously applauded that, right? Because I know that about you, right? Every single one of you. I guarantee this, although I'll gladly, when we do the Q&A, if you disagree with me, please come up first. Every single one of you want everyone in the United States, as long as they're here legally, as long as they're obeying the laws of the United States, to be treated equally under the law. Equal rights for everybody, right? Yet somehow, and I'm sure you guys saw this, the last 2 days, J.K. Rowling, who wrote Harry Potter, has been absolutely under assault from the woke crew, literally for just saying that men and women have different biological differences. And this is sort of what we have to fight, because there's a reason. There's a reason they go for this kind of stuff. Because if you can actually get, especially young people, if they can get you guys to literally not know about differences in sex, well, then what else is on the table? Guess what? Pretty much everything's on the table at that point, right? Everything that you think is on the table. And for you guys that are in college right now, you know, you guys are living at an incredibly unique time. You know, I'm not that old. I'm 43. We had Sega Genesis when I was in college. I was playing the original Sonic the Hedgehog. I know that's a little before your time. In video games, I can only run that way. I can't, you guys run this way. I can only run that way. I'm working on it. But I'm not that much older than you guys. But I want to talk about how things change so quickly and relate that to big tech. So I remember I was a sophomore in college, and some kid down the hall in the dorm started yelling, "I'm on the World Wide Web. I'm on the World Wide Web." And a bunch of us ran into his room, and on his little computer screen, a little 13-inch screen, I saw it was in color. I saw the Yankees logo and the Royals logo, and it said Yankees 3, Royals 1. And he said, "This is the internet." And I swear on my life, I was like, this is the stupidest thing I have ever seen. Okay, why would anyone want this? You could find out, you know, on SportsCenter at 7 o'clock. But now think about that. That's only 20 years ago, right? And now all of you are walking around with the world in your pocket. Actually in your pocket, you have the ability to get all of your thoughts out across the world. You have no idea the power of what you can do, right? And whether you're an anonymous troll or you're someone actually, you know, putting real info out there and hopefully fighting for what you believe in, you know, forthrightly and justly, you have a tremendous amount of power. Not only do you have a tremendous amount of power, whoever they are, that are constantly inundating us with fake news and nonsense and all of this woke postmodern craziness, they have a tremendous amount of power to control you, right? So you guys are at a really interesting time to be at college age, where you're supposed to be figuring out how to think, right? Not necessarily what to think. I'm not up here trying to tell you guys what to think. I will gladly lay out my opinions on everything, but I'm not here to tell you what to think. But you are at a stage in life where learning how to think is the most important thing. You're walking around with these phones, and you have a chance to affect the world in a way that simply could not be done before you. And what's really interesting about this is, think about this. So your parents' generation, right? There were 3 network news channels, right? So you had ABC, CBS, NBC, and depending on really just which anchor you liked, whether it was Dan Rather, Tom Brokaw, or Peter Jennings, you just picked one of the channels. And the channels pretty much had the same stuff going on, right? So 6:30, ABC, NBC, CBS, they're pretty much telling you the same thing. The lead story's pretty much the same. It's all pretty much the same. And because of that, as a country and really as a world, the Overton window was pretty narrow. And you might argue, well, we didn't get enough information. There were too many stories that were left out. We had too much manipulation in what got into the stories. And that is actually totally valid. What has happened now because of the phone is that the Overton window has just basically blown up. The Overton window, for those of you guys don't know, it's sort of the idea that we have a certain range of acceptable thought. And these are the things that we talk about. If things are within the Overton window, they're sort of the things that it's okay to talk about. But only one generation ago, we had some limits on that. Now it's sort of all over the place. And now we've got YouTube and Twitter and the rest of it. And for you guys that are conservatives or libertarians, you know you're on the wrong end right now of what big tech is doing. Because there's a reason that one of the slogans for Turning Point USA is "Big Government Sucks," right? There's a reason about that. What that is, what does that really mean? Big government sucks. What does it really mean? What it really means is that we shouldn't have one sort of amorphous giant monster that tells us what to do all the time, right? For me, as a classical liberal and someone with a lot of libertarian roots, that is the actual complete reverse of everything that I believe in. What I believe in is you guys. What I believe in is the individual. I believe in bottom up. I believe in local ability to create change. But what we do, unfortunately, in this country is we keep thinking that if we just give more power to the government, if we just give more power to the government, that they can magically make things better, when in fact almost all of the problems are actually because of the government in the first place, right? So we think, you know, and this is a really weird thing when it comes to what's happening on the left and the progressives and the democratic socialists, who, by the way, are just going to drop the word democratic within a year or so. They're socialists. That's how it is. But, you know, their whole thing is everything's wrong, right? If you watch, did you guys watch the debate the other night? Anyone watch that debate? Yeah. Yeah. I was at the Star Wars premiere, my friend. That's right. I'd rather give a whole talk on Star Wars. Maybe I'll do that in the hallway after. No spoilers, don't worry. Imagine if I just dropped the big one right now. That would be messed up. No, I'm not going to do that. I know how to start a riot, okay, people? That's how you do it. Dave Rubin ruined Star Wars before President Trump. All hell breaks loose. Where the hell was I going with that? Big government. Oh, okay. Big government sucks. Right, there you go. Thank you, sir. The idea that there should be one thing in charge of us is seriously, seriously dangerous. And by the way, in America, we've actually fought that idea better than any country in the world. You know, we have something called states' rights, right? We have states' rights, so we have an ever ongoing experiment. So the states, one state, like Florida, for example, could say we want low taxation, and then with low taxation might come a benefit or a problem, or Colorado can say we want legalized marijuana, or this state can say we want high taxes, much like California, where I live for now until they kick me out. We have, booing California. We got it. They're booing California. All right. It's weird. You know, I've only lived in New York and in California. It's very bizarre because I feel much more comfortable when I'm in Texas or Florida. It's mostly because I know when the socialists take over, I'm going to have to come live with one of you people, pretty much. So if you guys got an extra room, let me know. But the idea that we've broken our government into more local governments, and then hopefully not just state governments, but local governments beneath that, is a really magical experiment, right? Because what happens is, if you live in one state and you don't like what's going on there, the taxes are too high, education's bad, I don't want legalized marijuana, whatever the issue is, right? You have the ability to pick up and leave. This is what Randy Barnett, who's a constitutional law professor who I've had on the show, calls the foot vote. You can actually say in America, in a free country with different states, you can say, oh, I want to live in a country like this, in a state like this. I don't want to live in a state like this. And it's up to you, right? That's a beautiful thing. Now imagine if we take away that local power and we just hand all of that power over to the federal government. You know what you do is your option at that point, if you don't like what's going on, you basically have to leave the country. So that's why it's so important for you guys to fight for local power, fight for state power, and continue to fight for things that you can control, because the bigger that monster gets, when we talk about big government sucks, the bigger that layer gets, the less control you will have over your life. And that's why when you watch the Democratic debates and they have answers for everything, my God, these people who've never accomplished anything. Bernie Sanders has never hired anybody. He's never done anything. He's never actually done anything except become a millionaire while working for the government, right? I mean, it's the socialist dream, actually. But why would you want to outsource all of your thinking, your ability to be part of the national conversation? Why would you want to outsource it to government? And what I would say is the exact same premise is what we should be thinking about related to big tech. So there's a really interesting debate happening right now, and I see this particularly with conservatives, because this is where everything that I'm talking about here really sort of challenges what I would say the conservative and libertarian belief system is. And it's a really interesting one. And for you guys particularly, because you grew up with these phones in your pocket, with all of this tech, all of this power, you're going to have a unique position to figure out how to go forward with this. So as far as big tech right now, we've got Google, which is YouTube, obviously. We've got Facebook and Twitter. So we really have three companies. There's a couple more, but really when we talk about this, we've got three companies that pretty much can control your ability to see videos, to make sure that your tweets get out there, to make sure that your Facebook posts get out there. And you know, for the last 10 or so years, we all got on all of these things. I know most of you at this point are dropping Facebook when your parents are on there, but like we all got on these things, and they were all free, right? Or we thought they were free at least, but really what they were giving you for free, they were charging you your soul, because they were charging you your data, all of your information. You were handing that over and saying, oh, well, give me something for free. And we didn't realize the bargain. None of us realized it because it was all new. None of us realized it. But now that the internet has matured and we sort of understand what this thing is, there's a really interesting moment coming for all of us, which is, do we want the power of big tech to be the exact same power that big government has? So right now, Tucker Carlson, who I like a lot, he's a yeah. So there's a really interesting moment happening right now, and this is important, because this will show you why something so good is happening on the right. Because the issue that I'm going to bring up right now, I know you guys are going to be very divided on, and good people are divided on this, which is, what do we do about big tech? So Tucker Carlson, for example, who is a friend of mine, who's been on my show, I go on his show all the time, I think he is a good, forthright man. Right now, just in the last couple of days especially, he's been calling for government involvement in big tech. Now, as a conservative, yeah, so that's exactly what I'm talking about, right? I heard a boo, I heard some applause. Now that's interesting. So a conservative, or certainly for you that, you know, fall a little more libertarian, you wouldn't want government to solve a problem, right? You would want human ingenuity to solve it. You would want the free market to solve it. You would want people, basically. You would want you guys to figure out how to solve this problem of big tech. Now, Tucker's argument, and an argument I hear from a lot of people, is that this monster, this big tech monster, is so unique. It has so much power over us. It is so absolutely encompassing of everything that we do, from our maps to the way we communicate with each other, to Google searches, to the whole damn thing, that this is the case where government has to get involved. And I think that's actually a completely valid case. Now, another guy who I totally respect, who I've had on the show a bunch of times, is Yaron Brook from the Ayn Rand Institute. Now, Yaron is really, as an objectivist, which is what Ayn Rand disciples call themselves, he's a true free market guy. And I've debated this issue with him many times, and what he always says to me is, Dave, if you're not going to have your principles when they matter most, meaning if you're going to say, I want no government involvement, I want free market solutions, I want capitalism to flourish, if you're not going to hold those things when they matter most, like in the face of big government, then what's the point of having these principles? And that's why it's a very cool place for you guys right now, because you're 19, you're 20, you're 21. You guys are just on your adventure of figuring out what you believe in, what you want to fight for, how you want the world to be, and you're going to have a unique position to actually influence what happens here. So I went into Susan Wojcicki. I went into her office. She is the CEO of YouTube. It's funny because a lot of YouTubers go into her office and she takes selfies with them. It was very clear she didn't want to take a selfie with me, you know, because I'm scary, friends with Ben Shapiro. That's weird. His wife's a doctor. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. I always find it funny that people think Ben Shapiro is so scary. They think Ben Shapiro, he is 4'3", people. He's in my pocket. You guys want to see him? He's right here. No, you'll see him tonight. You'll see him tonight. Stay there, Ben. But it was clear to me when I went into YouTube that they were nervous that scary Dave Rubin is there, right? Like as if anything I've said up here or that anything that you guys have ever heard me say or virtually any of my conversations have been truly scary or dangerous or bigoted or racist or the rest of it. But I walked into her office and I said, Susan, well, first off, I should tell you that she said, the first thing she said to me was that this conversation's off the record. So I'm not gonna blow that at the moment, but I will say one thing that I said. I said, Susan, you know, right now, you've got the left and the right united in a very bizarre way, because think about this. Elizabeth Warren on the left. What's Elizabeth Warren, who in effect is a socialist, right? She has a government answer for everything. What does she want right now? Well, she wants the government to take over big tech, right? She wants more regulation. She wants to break up big tech. I said, well, you've got the left calling for that, and you've got the right calling for it because you've got Tucker Carlson calling for it. That's a really, really interesting little dilemma that you're in. I said, Susan, I might be the last guy willing to walk into your office saying, I don't want the government fixing this problem. I mean, yeah, all right. I actually believe that we can solve this problem. So you guys may have seen just in the last couple weeks, I launched my own tech company. We've solved, yeah. So I'm not going to do a sales pitch up here, but for those of you that haven't heard, go to locals.com. You can sign up to create your own communities with your own rules. We're bot-free and troll-free, native video, audio, all of the things that we all want. And we're working on some decentralized versions of it and dealing with the payment processor stuff and all that. Now, look, it's my best effort. It's my best effort at solving some of these problems. I think it solves 95% of the problems for 95% of the people. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. But even if it doesn't work, and I believe it will, I know that one of you in this room can solve these problems. And I would much rather take the risk with one of you guys that's a programmer or has the right ideas than handing that power over to the government. I mean, Jesus, I pay my California state taxes, which are painfully high. I pay them on a California state website. Have you ever been on a government website? Yeah. Well, you're not going to get the reference, but it looks like Prodigy from 1994, okay? They're barely in color. That's what we've been left with. And the idea that somehow the government is going to solve these problems is actually crazy. So I think this is one of the most unique problems for you guys to have to work through. And I think the more you think about it, the more the answers will come to you. But I do like ultimately what Yaron is offering there, which is if you don't have principles when they matter the most, if you're going to run around all day long saying, okay, big government sucks, but now I need the government to help me. You know, the other problem for this for conservatives right now, and we're all grappling with this, right? We're all grappling with this. And by the way, I always say that defending my liberal beliefs has now become a conservative position, which is a pretty powerful statement, right? I mean, the idea that you're for free speech is now a conservative belief. The left used to fight for those things, and it doesn't anymore. It's you guys that are fighting for it. That's actually a pretty beautiful thing. So it's on you guys. That's the main takeaway here. That's really what I want to leave you guys with more than anything else. We'll do a Q&A in just a second, but I want you guys to really understand the power that you have. You know, one of the things that we don't have right now in America, we don't have a lot of adults in the room, you know? We really don't. We don't have a lot of good people who are brave, who are honestly saying what they believe because they think that the mob is going to come for them and cancel culture is going to come for them and all of those things. And by the way, we see this all over the place. I mean, even if you look at what's happening with the Democrats right now, it's like, why is Joe Biden running for president? Does anyone really think he wants to be president? Not really. Does anyone think he's really up to the job? I mean, watching him is kind of sad at this point. But he was brought in to be the adult. He was brought in to say, no, socialists, be quiet. Be quiet. But now he can't stop himself because the woke thing is so actually pervasive that he can't stop himself. So Joe Biden, you might have heard it a couple weeks ago, they were doing that equality summit, and Joe Biden said, if you're going to jail, it's not your actual gender that should decide what jail you go to. It's whatever gender you identify with. I mean, try to think how bananas that is. But that's what you guys are fighting right now. And we need more adults in the room. And I suspect for those of you that are in college right now, you guys, hopefully some of you, will be the ones that do what Jordan Peterson talks about, right? Clean your room, stand up straight with your shoulders back, and fix this thing. I know you guys are going to do it. I have no doubt that you're going to do it, because I've spent the last 2 years of my life touring and being around you guys, and it's absolutely incredible. I mean, think about what you're doing right this second. It's 9:30 a.m. on a Saturday in Florida, and you guys are here seriously thinking about ideas, listening to people that you admire or like or care about in some way, and the only reason you're doing it is because you're actually defending your ability to live the life that you want to live, right? And you're right at the beginning of that thing. You're never going to be braver than you are right now, guys. I'll just say one other thing and then we'll jump into the Q&A. You will never, never be braver than you are right now. You know, when I speak at colleges, one of the questions that I always get asked is, you know, someone will say, well, my professor's a big lefty, and I'm afraid if I say anything, I'm not going to get the grade, right? I'm not going to get the grade, and if I don't get the grade, I'm not going to get into grad school, and if I don't get to grad school, I'm not going to get the job, and blah, 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 blah. And I used to say, a couple of years ago, I used to say to them, well, you know what? Just suck it up. Just suck it up and get the grade so that you don't, you know, because there's so many bad professors out there. There's so many bad actors. Fighting the monster all the time, especially at your age, is not fun. Just suck it up and get the grade and get out so that you can do what you want. But the more that I would answer that question that way, it started really feeling thin. It started feeling thin because it wasn't actually, it's not right and it's not true. You will never be braver than you are right now. And one of the things that, when I saw Jordan on tour, one of the things that he would talk about often is that if you're in school and you do that, let's say you do it once, you're a freshman, you're a sophomore, and you write a paper that you don't actually believe what you wrote, but you want to get the grade. Or the professor calls on you, and you stand up in front of the class and you say something that you know isn't true, right? About the gender pay gap, which is not real, or just any of these issues that we know are nonsense that are constantly forced on us. The first time you do it will be the hardest time, right? Because it'll be the first time you're actually up there outwardly lying. But then after that, it will get a lot easier each time. And by the time you walk out of school, you won't even remember the person that you are right now. So there is a bravery deficit out there. And I challenge you guys to be braver and fight for the things that you believe in, and even for the things that we may disagree on. I know I've got some disagreements with you guys on you know, a whole slew of issues, although I would say that slew of issues is getting smaller. Fight for those things. Fight for them honestly. Don't silence everybody. Don't shut everybody down. Don't try to destroy everybody. But be a little bit better than the other guys. And guess what, guys? It ain't that hard. It ain't that hard. They're pretty terrible, and I know you guys can be better. So on that note, we've got about 10 minutes left, and let's open this thing up for some Q&A. And I'm happy if you disagree with me. I'll gladly do that too. And thank you guys.
Hi, Dave. Kevin LaRusso from Colorado State, fellow huge Star Wars fan. And actually, my question has to do kind of with Star Wars as well as some other entertainment industries. How do you feel about how social justice topics have been interjected into pretty much every facet of the entertainment industry?
It's a great question. It's a great question. So I'm not going to blow anything on Rise of Skywalker for you guys, but I will say for those of you that are on the fence about it because of this question, because the way we see social justice infect everything, there's no social justice in this movie. There isn't, believe it or not. I don't want to blow anything for you. What I'll say is JJ he's a true fan of Star Wars, and he did not, you don't feel that, right? The other movies, you felt it. I mean, Last Jedi, it's just in every moment of it. This social justice thing, this fake diversity thing, this thing that you all know. Well, look, why does Hollywood do it? Because this is where people say politics is downstream from culture. If you can infect everybody with bad ideas through the media, well, then you can basically make them political slaves. And I don't want to live bowing to anyone. So you really have to be awake to this stuff. And this is also why the mainstream media is so terrible right now. Because for all of those years that I talked about, when ABC and CBS and NBC were the only places you could get news, there was really no way to challenge that, right? You could go to coffee with a friend, you could meet a friend at a restaurant, you could do something with people and argue about ideas. But now, every time CNN puts out fake news, which is literally every single day, well, guess what? You guys challenge them on it. You guys own them in the Twitter comments and all of those things. But by the way, that's also why we have to watch out for big tech. Because on January 1st, I don't know how many of you guys know this, on January 1st, Twitter is actually putting in their terms of service that they can now throttle your account. So we all know they've been doing it, right? Because many of the speakers that you're going to hear over these couple days are always complaining about shadow banning and my tweets don't get out to people and people unfollow me and the rest of it. So they've been doing it subtly, but now they're actually saying it to us. And I don't know if you know this, but we got an election coming in about 11 months from now. And yeah, and it clearly is going to be a Trump landslide. I mean, that's pretty obvious with this collection of But what would be a really great way to stop that? Well, if you could stop people from communicating with each other. So big tech, fight big tech, but fight Hollywood too. If they're pushing this stuff on you and you don't believe in it, don't go to the movies. But that said, it ain't in Rise of Skywalker, so you're going to be all right. Okay, may the force be with you.
Good morning, Dave.
Morning.
Question is, what specifically moved you from the left into the conservative movement, and do you think that that argument, however many years ago, can still be applied to move leftists into our conservative movement today?
I love that question. So, a lot of my book, which is coming out in April, is about this. I talk about my sort of transition from the left to what I would say is sort of the new, sort of open, broad, interesting, conservative, libertarian, classical liberal right. There were a few things that did it for me. I'll tell you, I think most of you know the story about watching Sam Harris on Real Time with Ben Affleck, and they were talking about radical Islam, and Affleck, who I'm pretty sure was on steroids because he was becoming Batman, he started screaming that Sam Harris and Bill Maher were gross and racist because they were criticizing a set of ideas. And the difference between criticizing ideas and people, right? You should be able to criticize any set of ideas. You should be able to criticize a religious set of ideas, whether that's the set of ideas that makes up Christianity or Judaism or Islam, the same way you should be able to criticize a set of ideas that's a political platform, whether it's the Republican or Democratic platform or any other platform. What you don't want to be is bigoted towards people. And I saw that what was happening on the left, and this is about 2013 or so, and I was on the Young Turks, and I saw that every time anyone disagreed with them, they were immediately a bigot and a racist, and they were awful and everything else. There's a guy that I'm sure many of you guys know, David Webb, who is a conservative talk show host. Yeah, I love David Webb. And one of the real moments that broke this for me, I'll tell you very briefly, was I was on the Young Turks, and David Webb and I had a long history. When I was a lefty, and he's always been on the right as a conservative, I had a show on Sirius XM years before, and I used to go on David's show all the time as the lefty, and he was on the right, and we would disagree on everything, but then we'd go out for dinner after and have some whiskey, and we were good to go. And I was on the Young Turks, and they showed a clip of David Webb. I think he was subbing for Hannity one night on Fox. And then I'm sitting up there with, 3 or 4 so-called tolerant progressives, and yeah, that guy, and the rest of them. And I'm sitting up there with them, and they're all calling him a sellout, and he's an Uncle Tom. Now, he happens to be a black conservative. Or I would say he happens to be black, but he's a conservative. And I know this guy. This is a good man who believes what he believes. He fights honestly for what he believes in. And I'm proud to be friends with him. But suddenly it became crystal clear to me. It was like, wait a minute, you guys call everybody racist, and now here's a black man who thinks differently than you want him to, and he's an Uncle Tom and a sellout, and even worse, things that I won't repeat up here. And that was so obvious to me because I knew him. So it wasn't just some intellectual exercise, that was one in a series of things that happened that broke it for me. And then what I was shocked to find out is what I started with this speech with, is that over these last couple of years, I have consistently found that conservatives will agree to disagree. You guys actually are happier, and you look a lot better, and you'll wear clothes that fit. And yeah, and these things, by the way, these things are not coincidences, because you believe in self-reliance, you believe in the individual, and that makes you want to show up at 9 a.m. on a Saturday in Florida to figure out what the world should be that you want to live in, and that's a beautiful thing. So the one-line answer to what you're asking is, if you want to get people out of leftism, right? If you have friends that are socialists or lefties or woke or progressives, you want to get them out, just be a little bit better than they are. Every time they say something horrible to you, don't be a patsy. You don't have to be a total pushover or any of that. But if you're just a little bit better than them, and a little calmer, and you're willing to explain yourself a little bit more, you have no idea how quickly you can change these people. Trust me, I know. Thanks. All right, I'm going to try to do these in 30 seconds each so we can get to everybody.
Sure. So my question is on immigration. On one side, we have people from India who come with advanced degrees, speak English, love the country, and they want to contribute to the economy, and they have to wait for 20 years. And on the other side, we have people coming from the southern border without any papers, and they come illegally. How do we fix this problem, and are you for a merit-based system?
Oh, man, I said 30 seconds, and then he gave me the immigration question. All right, here we go. Look, first off, I would say it is the right, it is the duty of every country to figure out what they want their borders to be. If you want a little more information on this, read a book by Jerome Harzoni. He's been on my show. It's called The Virtue of Nationalism. The way to make a strong international community is by having strong nations. It's the duty of America to figure out what our borders are. It's the duty of Mexico to figure out what their borders are. It's the duty of India to figure out what their borders are, and figure out how many people can come in and what type of people. And by the way, this is a really rich place to argue things, and it doesn't mean because you want less immigration you're racist, and it doesn't mean because you want more immigration you're a globalist or any of that nonsense. We have to figure out, we're a nation of immigrants, right? We're a nation of immigrants. Everyone in this room descended from immigrants. So that doesn't mean that it always has to be the level of immigration that it was 50 years ago, and nations change, and we're doing a lot of automation now, so we don't have as many low-paying jobs. So when you hear people screaming about $15 minimum wage, it's like, man, go into Burger King, and guess what? They'll replace you with an iPad, you know? So it's like we have to really seriously think about all of these things. So I can't fully answer that because I want to get to everybody, but I would basically say it's the duty of every nation to figure out how they want to deal with immigration. And what I would say is we have done it better than anyone in the history of the world. We have done the melting pot thing where everyone still wants to come here. Nobody leaves. Nobody leaves. I can't take it in America. I'm moving to Pakistan. Nobody does it, right? There's a reason they don't do it, because we have something called the Bill of Rights. We have the strongest codified freedoms of any nation on earth. And always remember that. So when people are screaming about open borders, and when the lefties and the Democrats right now are screaming about how horrible the country is, notice that nobody leaves, right? Lena Dunham is still here. She ain't going anywhere. None of them leave. So that would be the main thing. But I'll do more shows this coming year on immigration, obviously, because it's going to be big as the election rolls around.
Hello, Dave. I'm Tyler. I'm a black conservative. You are my hero, and you saved me from being a leftist. So although I understand your argument.
I like how you had to announce you're black. Thank you.
Amen, brother. So, although I understand your argument about big tech, if big tech is violating our rights, like the First Amendment, shouldn't the government intervene to protect our rights?
So, look, this is where we can whittle down constitutional law all day. I mean, look, the First Amendment is making sure that the government is not encroaching on free speech. So as long as big tech and government are separated, my belief is that big tech can do what they want as private companies. Now, there's an absolute legit argument that these companies have now grown so big, and they have so many connections and work with governments that they, in effect, are sort of de facto governmental agencies at some level. So I'm completely sympathetic to that argument. But you know what? I believe that David can beat Goliath, right? So maybe Dave could beat Google. I really believe that we can do this. We can do this. We can do this without trading in one of our most cherished beliefs. So I hear you on that, but it's not an encroachment on the First Amendment unless you really believe that big tech is already part of the government, which I think maybe Tucker might make a case for that. So it's an interesting place to have some argument.
Hello, Mr. Rubin.
The clock hit zero, guys. This is the last one, unfortunately.
Hello, Mr. Rubin. Thank you for coming. I'll be very brief. So I've been a Star Wars fan. Oh, that's a Star Wars question. I've been a Star Wars fan since I was 8. I really don't like the new movies. I think Force Awakens was just a remake of New Hope. I think Last Jedi whatever the main, I forget her name already, but Rey is just a Mary Sue, and I think the writing isn't
I
very
like how the president's coming later and we're turning this into a Star Wars convention.
Honestly, I'm more interested in this. My question is, do you particularly like the new movies? Because I know you just watched the newest one. Do you particularly like them, or do you think that they basically have any chance of being anywhere as good as the originals?
All right, so I will say this about Star Wars, that the prequels actually, as the years go by, are going to be looked at more favorably and more favorably. Wow. I'm glad to see you guys applauding that. There is an incredible, you know, you put aside Jar Jar Binks and some stiff acting and some of that kind of stuff. There's an incredible story within Star Wars that everybody forgets about. It's not just the story of the light and the dark and fighting Darth Vader. There is an incredible story about the accumulation of power. What's the prequels really about? It's actually about this. It's about why big government sucks. Because what did Palpatine do in the prequels? He kept setting up fake fights so that he could get more and more power, right? So he could become Supreme Chancellor. And then the second he did, what did he do? He ended the war, except now the Jedi were gone and he had complete control over everything. So there's a great libertarian message in Star Wars that I really love. And as for everything else, you know, big companies, Disney's running all of this stuff. What I would say more than anything else, it's the same thing that I would say about the Marvel movies at this point. We need new stories, right? We need new things to capture our imagination. And that's what you guys are supposed to do, right? Do it. Write a better story. Write a new story. And through those stories, you can figure out what's true, because that's how we make things happen, right? You have to capture people's imagination. And when you do that, you can do almost everything. Thank you guys so much. I really enjoyed talking to you this morning. And I'll see you on the YouTube, everybody. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it, guys.
That for American conservatives, that always should be our project. Creating a better society, creating an opportunity society, but doing it through returning.
All right, good morning, everyone. How you feeling? We ready to go? Yes? Yes? So I'm Rich Lowry. I'm editor of National Review magazine, and as some of you might know who followed National Review, we've had a little bit of a complicated relationship with the president. We very strongly opposed him in the primaries. Things got tense for a while, but I want to assure you everything's fine now. Like the icebreaker was a while ago. After a break, I came back to my office, and I found a brown envelope on my chair from the White House. Of course, I was very curious what this was. I opened it up, and it was a ripped-out copy of one of my columns from the New York Post. Now, I'm a New Yorker. I consider the New York Post the nation's newspaper. More importantly, the President of the United States considers the New York Post the nation's newspaper. So he had ripped out this column, and I'd written it after the Virginia gubernatorial election, where the Republican candidate, this guy Ed Gillespie, had done everything he could to run away from Trump. Said, I don't know him, I've never met him, please don't ask me about him. Didn't work. He got shellacked in this election anyway, because there were so many suburban voters in Virginia just desperate to send a message against Trump, and voted against Gillespie because it was the easiest way to do it. So I wrote this column about how Trump is such an overwhelming political and cultural figure that there's no escaping him. And I thought I made lots of incisive observations in this column. I don't think any of those made any impression on the president. What caught his eye was the headline that the New York Post editors had put on this column, which was, "There is only Trump." And the president, as he's accustomed to doing, had taken out his black Sharpie, circled this headline, drew a big arrow, and wrote, "Rich, so true, Donald J. Trump." So that's the way it's gone for me the last three years or so. But it's a pleasure to be among so many like-minded people, especially as mentioned, because I come from New York. a city that embodies the founder of my magazine, Bill Buckley's old axiom that liberals don't care what you do so long as it's mandatory. We got quite the crew up there. We have AOC, the leader of the squad. Yeah, I don't know if you noticed the other day that fellow squad member Congresswoman Tlaib blamed a hideous terror attack carried out by so-called black Israelites on, yes, of course, white supremacy. We got Jerry Nadler, who's leading the impeachment effort, even though it makes him very sad. And I don't know if it's just me, but if something makes you sad, shouldn't you not do it? I mean, doesn't that seem axiomatic? We have Andrew Cuomo, the governor, who is the brother of CNN's Chris Cuomo. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I guess a lot of you did. You all saw the viral video of Chris Cuomo freaking out when someone called him Fredo. And in National Review, we commented after this that, Chris Cuomo had a really easy out. All he should have said to this guy is, no, it's my brother who's Fredo. And then finally, we have probably the worst mayor of a major city in America, Bill de Blasio. I'm not a huge fan or have much regard for the judgment of Democratic primary voters, but one thing I had to give them real respect for and props for is they took an instant hatred to Bill de Blasio, like knowing nothing about the guy. While he was still running, there were some polls where de Blasio got 0%, in polls that had a margin of error of 5 points, which meant he might have been actually sitting at -5 in the Democratic primary, and very quickly left. So speaking of impeachment, did you all notice the other day how Nancy Pelosi opened the proceedings with the Pledge of Allegiance, right? And you knew this was a solemn occasion because no one took a knee while she was doing this. But why would she have wanted to start with the Pledge of Allegiance? Well, part of the reason is that this is the most flag-soaked society in the world. We have a flag on every single one of our public building. Every car dealership in America has a huge honking American flag flying on the grounds. We have written into our federal code how you should treat the flag. And it says literally you should treat it with the respect as if it were a living thing, as if it were a person. And it's just not a metaphor to say in America that people have died for the flag. People have literally died for the flag. If you read about Civil War history, there are so-called color sergeants whose job wasn't to carry a gun into combat. It was to carry the American flag into combat, to rally their fellow troops when things got confused, to show them what point to go to. Very close to where Abraham Lincoln gave the Gettysburg Address, 7 corpsmen were shot down protecting the American flag. You read about the Battle of Fredericksburg. There was one color sergeant wounded, handed the flag over to another color sergeant, wounded, hands it over to another color sergeant who runs to a mortally wounded officer so he can wrap himself in the American flag as he's dying. So this is, for me, why anyone who disrespects the American flag, no matter how just they think their cause is a disgrace and an embarrassment. So that segues me to the topic I mainly want to address with you today. I want to talk a little bit about nationalism and American nationalism. Now, how many people out there have heard bad things about nationalism last several years? Show of hands. Almost everyone, right? Most people. I'm here to tell you what you've heard about nationalism is almost certainly wrong, and I want to make 5 points about it. So, first point, nationalism is a very old, it's a very natural, it's a very powerful force. Just one indication of this. Year 1425, Joan of Arc. She has a vision from an angel in her father's garden that she, a 13-year-old girl, is going to liberate France from the English. The English kings at this time had a fixation not just with governing England, but with governing France. They'd occupied France to this end. They had precipitated what's known as the 100 Years' War, a horrific event in France. Populations reduced by about half, famine, civil war, all the rest of it. And you had this teenage girl saying, I'm going to stop this, and I'm going to rid our country of the English, and somehow convinces the authorities at the time that they should let her take a go at this. And she is camped with French troops outside the French city occupied by the English of Orleans, and she starts sending messages to the English troops. Says, I just want to warn you, I'm chasing you all, every single one of you, from our homeland here, and if you don't listen to the instruction, I'll kill you. Just a fair warning. And the English are these hard-bitten troops. You know, they're not going to take this very seriously, this message from a teenage girl. They shout back across the parapets, oh, another message from the French whore. And what does Joan do when she hears this? Well, she does what most teenage girls would do when insulted in such a way. She cries tears of outrage and shame, and then she does what no teenage girl in world history had done prior to that point or has done after that point. She mounted a white horse. She led the French troops into battle carrying a white banner with an image of Christ sitting in judgment, and she chases the English from the city of Orleans, and true to her word, she restores the French heir to the French throne. Now, eventually, her string of luck runs out. The English capture her. They subject her to a long trial, a long show trial. They spent a lot of time obsessed with the fact that Joan wore men's clothes, which suggests to me that in 15th century England, the whole trans craze would not have gone over very well. But at the end of this, they do what was the point of the whole exercise at the beginning. They find her guilty. They burn her at the stake. She proclaims the name of Christ through this ordeal, and then they spread her ashes in the Seine River. And she was basically the same age as a lot of you, 19 years old. And why did they do this? Well, the point of the exercise was to eliminate all memory of this incredible episode, to eliminate all memory of Joan, to discredit her forevermore. And what happened? The opposite happened, because Joan had become a symbol of her nation. And centuries later, the French are occupied by a much more hideous and evil power, the Germans. And what do the Free French, fighting against the Nazis, what do they take as their symbol? They take Joan of Arc as their symbol. They paint her cross, her symbol, the Cross of Lorraine, on their planes and on their ships. When Charles de Gaulle, the leader of the Free French, himself a formidable symbol of the French nation, dies, his village erects a 60-foot Cross of Lorraine in his honor. That, in a nutshell, is nationalism. Now, that's an example from elsewhere. Nationalism, key part of the mainstream of the tradition in this country. You don't get an American Revolution without nationalism, the basic argument of which is that we're our own nation and we should govern ourselves. You don't get the drafting and the ratification of the Constitution without nationalism. The insight of the Federalists who supported the Constitution was that we needed to have a strong and capable national government. Yes, limited, but strong and capable. You don't get victory in the Civil War without nationalism, which is a key event underlining the legitimacy of the American nation state. This nationalist tradition, it runs through Hamilton, it runs through Lincoln, it runs